All right, good afternoon, everyone. What a day. It's been kind of a crazy day for LendIt, for the conference, for the industry. So my name is David Snitkof. I'm one of the co-founders of Orchard, which is a technology platform connecting direct lending investors with direct lending originators. And the LendIt conference is actually a very special occasion for us because in many ways, it's affected the way we've built our company and the way we've built our product. So we actually got our start, many of us, building our own tools to optimize our own investing on Lending Club and Prosper with small amounts of our own money. Then after my colleagues, Matt and Angela, who are in the audience today, spoke at last year's LendIt conference and met a lot of institutional investors, they realized that in order for this industry to really scale, we would need an entirely different degree of technology and analytics and reporting and data. So we took that idea and we started a company, we raised venture capital, we launched a product into the market, and we hired a team of 13 really talented people with deep backgrounds in technology and finance and a common passion for revolutionizing what is a really important industry. We also registered as an investment advisor with the SEC, and we're now automating and managing investments for a large number of institutional clients. This is the landscape. So many of you have seen this in your swag bag or on our table upstairs. I think we're really fortunate to be part of a dynamic and rapidly growing industry. And so this is how we've represented the industry graphically. The reason that we do things like this is because one of our goals at Orchard is not just to invest money, not just to power originations, not just to look at data, but also to advance the general knowledge in the space. So the landscape is one example of that, but we also post very analytical, comprehensive research on our blog. And we also host the peer-to-peer lending meetup, which now has 700 members in New York, San Francisco, and starting later this week, Chicago. So one of the big areas of focus for our company today is adding support for new origination platforms. And this is to give our institutional investors access to more types of loans to fund, which there's great demand for, as well as to enable these originators to grow their business with a marketplace model. So before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about the history of economics and why we're even here. So as I was thinking about this and thinking about the presentation and LendIt in the industry, I thought, when I worked at places like American Express and Citigroup, I thought I was doing interesting work, but most of my friends and family didn't really care. And today, there are 1,000 people at a conference about lending. So what happened? And I think the reason why everyone's so excited about this is that we're actually entering a new phase in our economic history. So in the beginning, all lending was peer-to-peer, right? We started as hunter-gatherers, every man for himself, fighting over scarce resources, little if any commerce, right? Then with the rise of villages, every village needs a butcher, a builder, a cobbler, and if you went to get a loan, you'd probably get a loan from someone you knew very well, right? So we had economic differentiation, personalization, but not a lot of scale. Move into the industrial era and you get to large mega corporations and rapid economic growth. Very, very efficient processes, but at the expense of personalization and humanity. And I think really only in the last 5 to 10 years have we gotten to a place where technology has allowed humanity to scale. So it's kind of amazing, but we're now living in an era where every big consumer-facing company, it's hard to think about it, actually has a team that's dedicated to monitoring Twitter and actively engaging with customers. It's very personal, it's very human, but it's done at a global scale. It's an era where algorithms predict what songs you'll listen to, what wine you drink, who you might want to marry. And then when you can go to get a loan, you can get a loan not just from a handful of capital providers, but from an investor marketplace. And this is what's really exciting. It's the world's largest industry, and we're actually just getting started disrupting it. Right, so let's actually contrast two of the typical ways that lending businesses are financed. So this traditional model has worked very, very well for a very long period of time for a variety of lending businesses, funding loans with bank deposits, lines of credit, maybe even some equity. That's worked great. In fact, many of the platforms in this room and at this conference today have used that model to scale their business. Why? Because they have committed capital, they know exactly what their cost of funds is, and they don't have to deal with the hassle of managing an entire investor marketplace. Sounds good, but there are some downsides too, right? During the recession, a lot of lenders actually had their credit lines pulled, and that caused them to go out of business overnight. So they had concentration risk there. Also, if you have a limited diversity of investors, you might have a limited diversity of product offerings. And then, of course, when you're relying on 1 or 2 lines of credit, it's actually difficult to scale your business up and down in a quick way. Move to a marketplace model. So in a marketplace model, as we all know, originators place their loans into a marketplace for investors to bid on and select and buy. This uses the power of the internet, and one of the big lessons of the internet is that whatever was centralized will become decentralized, and you can take that bet every time. And if you diversify your capital sources, then you can also diversify your product offerings and optimize your marketing spend. So if you've spent all this money and time building a great consumer or small business-facing brand, you probably have a lot of customers coming to your website searching for either product structures or product extensions that you may not offer yet, or that may not be supported under a limited number of funding sources. But chances are, given that there is such a diversity of investors and people have all different investment goals, there is some investor out there or some group of investors who is interested in that type of loan, in that type of borrower, in that type of duration. And of course, as we've all seen, companies that operate marketplaces have very high valuations compared to companies that operate like banks. So we at Orchard actually talk to originators every day, and maybe about 50 today, right? So a lot of people here, and they all get it, but there's a lot of concerns and a lot of challenges associated with a marketplace model, and this is not an easy kind of business to build. So what are some things that people have told us? Okay, now we don't just have to acquire borrowers, we have to acquire investors too. We have to build an entirely new set of technology infrastructure when we've already built an underwriting system. And then how do we handle the payment flows in a complex, fractional, institutional market? It's scary stuff, right? But we believe in it a lot. And we know that marketplaces are the future. People are very into this, and all signs point to moving towards a marketplace model. So at Orchard, we've built a lot of tools and products to help originators move into a marketplace and really scale their business. One, if you're an originator and you have an API already, come talk to us. Talk to those guys in that row, John and Phil. We will build to your API, and we're ready to start integrating right away. But if you don't have an API yet, and you have a great engineering team, you have good data, and you're wondering what to put in an API to enable this type of market, we've written a pretty detailed specification of all the functions and capabilities and data that you would need to integrate with this kind of system. And we can send that to you, so let us know. What if you've never heard of an API? What if you'll never have an API? What if you're not a tech company? That's totally fine with us. So we've built a new product that enables structured data integration, meaning if you have your data organized in spreadsheets, in tables, we can upload that kind of data and enable just the same capabilities as if you integrated with us via an API. We're also building software to abstract some of the payment flow and reduce some of the complexity in managing a large institutional marketplace where payments have to go back and forth between investors and originators and borrowers and all these things. And of course, all the software in the world wouldn't matter without the investor demand. And as I think we can see by the attendance here today, by the attendance at the conference, and just everything we're seeing in the market, there is huge, huge demand for this type of thing, for these types of assets in consumer, small business, student, asset-based loans in the US and international. So if you're an originator and you enable this market, the demand is there. That story has already been told. So in short, if you're looking to build an investor marketplace, we can help. Please let us know. And if we have any time for questions, we do? Great, so we can take some questions. That is a resounding yes. Existing investors on our platform have an appetite for more loans from the existing platforms as well as for new platforms. So that's very clear, and there are even investors who are not with us yet, but essentially in the pipeline and really, really itching to get access to new platforms in the US and international. How fast has an originator written an API? Or have we integrated with an originator? Both ways. So part of it depends on the tech stack that an originator has. If they've planned things in a certain way, implementing an API can be trivial. If not, it can take a little longer. Most of what we've seen, if people are very committed to it, it can take them, let's say, 2 to 3 months to write it from scratch. I had someone tell me last night, before I left the office to come to this conference, I told my tech team they need to have an API in 90 days. So send me your spec, and they're going to do it. So I was obviously very happy to hear that. And so I think that kind of time frame is reasonable. If everything is defined and the capabilities are good, the time for us to actually integrate it can be in a matter of weeks. We won't be the bottleneck there. Thank you.